Hey guys, I'm Phoenix here and welcome to Space Engineers. So, I'm not really going to be talking too much about Space Engineers itself. I'm going to be more talking about the attitudes surrounding early access, the entitlement, the demo crew, all of that sort of stuff. So, first of all, the guys at Keen have said that they are going to be releasing an update every week. And for some updates, this means that in order to actually release it every week, they are rushed for time. Sometimes they can only do a quick test before the patch goes live, and as a result, it will cause problems which they can then fix later on. But there is an increase in people who forget that Space Engineers is in early access, and so that when a patch does come and inevitably it's got problems, they immediately go on the forums and plaster the forums with "why don't you fix your game?" The thing is that the game is currently in alpha. Now, alpha isn't being used as an excuse, but it is a reason to be a little bit more accepting about the bugs that exist within the game. Bugs are going to exist no matter what, and it's better for the developer to do a quick check just to make sure the game is working, and then give it over to the people who've brought into early access so that they can find all the niggly little issues, and then those people can then report those issues so that when Keen come in the next day, because they release the build before they go home, so they've had a good night's sleep, they come back into work, they can look at the bug reports and they can fix them with a hotfix. Thursday has been is basically when they release the patch. Friday, and then maybe a few other times throughout the week, they might do some hotfixes as well. But Friday is generally quite a big hotfix that fixes the more major issues that have slipped through the net. Now, bugs exist in every game. It's not necessarily a rare thing, and well, we can use this ship that I have here as a very good example. So I designed this ship to be a mining ship. It's a large ship with these mining drills on board. But what I've started to find is there are obviously bugs with this ship. Things that are wrong that I didn't actually design with that in mind. So, for example, it had no ore detection and I had to do everything by eye, which can be a little bit annoying, so I did add this ore detector. Also, I found that it was quite dark in front of it, so I added a couple of spotlights. Now, another thing that I've noticed recently is that these plates here, basically when it's drilling ore shoots out like bullets and it strikes the front and it dents the ships. So I think here we need to start adding some steel plates. It's quite a good analogy for what Keen are doing. They will do the best that they possibly can, but at the end of the day the game will have bugs in, and every so often they're going to have to hotfix it, like I'm doing here with this ship. I'm hotfixing the ship. I'm modifying these light armor slopes so that I can put in heavy armor slopes, which should be a little bit more resilient against the bullets that are the ore fragments. So this should help quite a bit. Unfortunately, there are people out there who just believe that early access is it should be finished because it's being sold for money. And that's not really accurate at all, because the developers have said, look, this game is in alpha. You shouldn't be you shouldn't be comparing it to the same state as a game that is actually finished. You know, it's not a released title, it is actually early access. It is actually an alpha. So, how does all this work? Okay, so your pre-alphas, they're your prototype builds. There's sort of earlier builds before that as well, where you're just basically building the game. It's not really in a playable state, and it's not even in a testable state. The developers might be able to test a few features, but it's not really the sort of thing you give to a tester. And then you have your pre-alpha state, which you might give to a tester. It's good enough a build so that you can start building test plans based off that build. But it's not really ready to test per se. But you can sort of bug things that are happening, so the developers know where they need to go next. I need that one. It's this one. So then you have your alpha. Now your alpha is your very first version of the game that's given to testers, for your publishers and the like. They vary an awful lot. Most alphas are not in this sort of state. This is actually a very good alpha. Most alphas you wouldn't necessarily have textures. You might have quite a lot of developer textures. Very basic functionality. You may even have, say, doors that are closed that you are meant to open but you can't open yet because that bit hasn't been built yet. Pathfinding will be pretty much non-existent. AI will be very dim. You know, it's the alpha stage that is there to build on. You know, so it's there to add things and build on them. It's there to just basically pour in all the features. You're not really bug testing, and there is a huge list at that point of things that the testers shouldn't bother bugging. Because it's in work in progress, there's no point in bugging it, because it's going to change later on down the line. Later on, what the testers will be looking for when the developers say, "Yep, we've got rid of all of the placeholder textures." So if you see a placeholder texture, you bug it. That's when you start bugging your placeholder textures and sounds and the like. You know, that's what you're looking for. But that might come very late in alpha, probably more towards beta. And then, yeah, beta is your bug fixing stage. That's when you're tightening up everything. You're making everything work perfectly, so that when you get to release candidate, your game is to a releasable state, hopefully. Chances are it's not going to end up that way. There will be bugs that creep in, some nasty crashes and the like, but you know, on the whole, by release candidate, it should be a fairly solid title. But this game, like all alphas, it's an alpha. You cannot judge it to the same standard as a released title, and furthermore, you cannot say that because this game is being released to the public, it needs to have a demo. A demo should be an example of the best possible version of the game. It should be an advertisement. It should say to everyone, this is what you will buy. Space Engineers is not to that state yet because the game is not even in beta, so a lot of optimizations for various systems haven't been done. The game runs reasonably well on my system because it's a reasonably mid-range system, and probably the developers have actually been optimizing it for mid-range systems because they're the cards and they're the systems that they can afford to work with. Higher end systems are experiencing some reasonably more major issues, but so are lower systems. The thing is that you can't say either way from a demo of an alpha, is this game going to run well on my system? Because you don't know. You don't know what it's actually going to be like. All you know is that from a demo standpoint, your game runs well or it doesn't. Or it runs reasonably well. Or, you know. And you can kind of get a grasp of what the game is from a demo. But then, things are being added so often. What do you want them to do? Update the demo at the same time? It's a little bit weak, really, to be demanding a demo of a game that just isn't finished yet. Things are being added all the time. So we just got, for example, remote control over items on allied ships. We got button panels, so you can set buttons up to do various things on the ship. You know, for example, you can have a button that opens a door. You can have a button that, you know, does a multitude of functions if you so wish. You know, these things are just being added all the time, and each time they add more content. So those of you who want a demo, what do you want them to do? Do you want them to spend a load of time getting the demo running for the possibility that it brings in a few more people? Or do you want them to work on the game that, you know, for the majority? Ultimately, it's a case of for the majority. You know, Keen will probably continue to work on the game for the majority of people. And my last little foible. All this moaning about Xbox One exclusivity and like, it doesn't harm PC gaming at all. So Keen are going to continue to work on the PC game. They have a team for the PC game, and they've got a team for the Xbox port. Simple as. You're not going to see any sort of downside to this. Keen will have more money to play with, so they'll be able to work on the Xbox One and the PC One, you know, at the same time. It's just not going to harm anything. And you know, there are people out there who say, well, why isn't it being brought to Mac? Why isn't it being brought to Linux? Well, quite simply, really. So the PC version, it runs on Windows 7 and 8, and Vista. Not sure if it supports XP still. Don't know. But so yeah, it supports Windows operating systems. So to move it from Windows to the Xbox One, which is running just a slightly modified version of Windows, takes pretty much no effort, really. The real effort is going to be getting the systems to run well on the Xbox One, because the Xbox One is outdated hardware already. But it's similar enough to a PC that the port should be reasonably easy to do. Linux and Mac users are in the minority. There's probably far less Linux and Mac users out there than there are Xbox One users, mainly because a lot of Xbox One users, I should add, that are gamers. So not everyone who owns a Mac is a gamer. Not everyone who owns Linux is a gamer. And neither of those people necessarily want to play games on their systems. So they might want to use their systems for graphical design or servers or whatever. Those people are very much in the minority. So to release Space Engineers on the Xbox One is a better move. And I'm sure quite a few people won't like that. Tough. Mac users like to parade around that they never get any viruses, and you know the reason for that? That would be because there is such a small Mac market share that nobody makes viruses for Macs. And there's a few Mac viruses floating around. The whole notion that Macs can't catch viruses is complete. It's a fable. It's something that Mac users just like to parade around without actually thinking about it. Now, is there any problem with Mac? No, of course not. If you want a Mac, then fine. I do know people who game on Macs. Their choices, as a result, quite limited, but they do that. I think one of the most ridiculous comments that I saw was a guy who was claiming that the reason why, the Xbox One was doing some very shady deals when it was released, and the 3 links that he posted was to do with used gaming. Now let me enlighten you a little bit about used gaming. Used games only really benefit 2 people. They benefit the consumer because they're usually cheaper than the full price than the new games, and they benefit the stores. They do not benefit the publishers or the developers. So when you are buying a new game, a small portion of that will go to the store. A certain proportion of that will go to the publisher, the console maker, whatever, and then a proportion of that will go to the developer. When you buy a used game, all of that money is going to the store, and that money is usually a lot more than they would get from selling a new game, which is why when you go into a shop and you ask for a game, they will always, say you go into Game for example, they will always try, if they've got it, they will try and sell you the used copy, because the store gets far more out of it. And I thought that was a little bit ridiculous, this shady practice about used games, try and get the money to go back to the developer and to the publisher rather than the store getting it all. Rather more worryingly was that the shady business practice of forcing users to connect very, very good cameras in their living room attached to their Xbox One. By default it has to be attached, otherwise the machine doesn't turn on, whilst giving information out to the NSA. No, that didn't seem to bother them at all. Used games, on the other hand, very shady. Ugh, some people, honestly. So yeah, that's my little chat. It's probably been going on for a little while now. But oh well, it's something that was just annoying me, and when I get annoyed about something, I calmly talk about it on YouTube. Yeah, which I think is a good venting. It's a good place to vent, and I hope that it sort of educates a few people about how things are tested. So when you get your build of Space Engineers and something isn't working, it's an alpha. Wait for the Friday hotfix, because chances are it's going to fix whatever issue you've got. Don't start moaning at the developers for not fixing their game. It's a ridiculous comment. So that's my exasperated chat. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you next time.